Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, MD.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to An Impact on Your Health. An impact on your health for every day our goal. To have you learn at least one thing to help you live better and longer. An Impact on Your Health, heard every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney, and I'm with you each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9. An Impact on Your Health for each day you'll find current medical news, knowledgeable guests, fascinating health topics, and of course, where we encourage you to call in and join in. Today, well, hey, what's up with thyroid? I promised to get to it today. Things are happening nationally, locally, and just right here in this office of mine, too. So I'm going to bring you up to speed on what I see happening with thyroid and some new changes here, especially at the office, on how we're going to be handling thyroid from here on out. It is a pervasive disease here in western Pennsylvania because you are a part, or you are living smack dab in the middle of what's called the goiter belt. Well, more about that before the hour is up today. But, of course, too, you can call up and ask a question and make a comment. Anything on your mind is okay with me. The number to do that is 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262. And, of course, I'll give that number additionally throughout the hour. Now, scheduling-wise, things are starting to take shape. On Monday, Rick Hill is going to be back with us. Rick is the gentleman who was here about a week and a half ago, and he's got an interesting story where he was diagnosed as having a terminal cancer 34 years ago. Of course, it's 34 years later. He doesn't have that terminal cancer anymore. He's got a heck of a story to tell, and he's affiliated with a company called Healthy Perceptions. I just got a grab bag work of I'll call them devices from the company, nice enough to send on to me. And the air purifier was plugged in yesterday afternoon. I will tell you, when I walked in, boy, what a difference. More up and coming with Rick Hill on Monday about all these devices, about his story. Those of you who were with us, it was on the 12th of the month, where Rick was with us for the first time, will enjoy his return. On Wednesday, we'll be talking about forgetfulness. This thing, well, goes by a number of names. OBS, Organic Brain Syndrome, I think is an acronym that I'm quite used to. You may not have heard that. Alzheimer's, I think, unfortunately, you have heard about, and it scares the bejesus out of every single one of us. Anyway, Mark Underwood's going to be with us talking about organic brain syndrome on Wednesday. And, of course, next week, we are rolling right into the last week in April. We'll be turning the page 30 days in September, April, June, and you know how it goes. Well, we turn the page next Friday and go into May. Now, in May, and after having, and I told you that I got my own compression wear the other day. I still haven't tried it on. I promise to report back to you when I do how great I feel, according to Vera Watkins, who was with us on Monday, talking about compression clothing. The reason I re-mentioned that, even though I promised to tell you more about it after I sample this top, it's a top. It's a little thicker than most materials, but more on that another day. The reason I'm mentioning it today is on the 3rd of May, we finally booked them. We're going to be having another discussion about compression wear, this time compression wear for animals. I think specifically for dogs. Anyway, I was taken aback with the first conversation on compression wear for humans. Learned a lot from Vera Watkins. I think you all did too. I was so amazed that before the day was up, last Monday, I was called about an additional guest talking about compression wear for animals. The item is called, and I'll just lay this part on you. and let you savor it for a while. I think it's a titillator. It's a teaser. It's called a Thunder shirt. Hey, go figure. That's going to be on May 3rd. On May 5th, Dr. Eric Shapiro is going to be back with us. Gentleman who wrote the book, The New Wrinkle, Things I Learned from the Elderly People That I Work With, or some paraphrase thereof. Anyway, you remember him. He came to us last month 2 different times talking about this issue. Your telephone responses were so fervent that it appeared to me that further time scheduled with this gentleman was worthwhile. So that's as we turn the page into the new month of May. Things will be heating up around here. Things will be heating up around outside too, as hopefully our nicer weather will have reached us by then. So that's the up and coming schedule as I see it right now. Of course, items through the Spirit. Look, where's my little? Here we go. Through the Spirit. That phone number to get the product at a discount rate, $29 for enough for a month's supply of this great tasting combination of 14 biblical fruit purees. Throw in with that the alkalinized mineral from the Dead Sea, and frankincense myrrh for the herbs, and resveratrol, and you've got it. What a great tasting thing it is, too. The number, as I keep on telling you, 1-800-442-3793, 1-800-442-3793. Also, too, for those with the techie-mindedness to go and do it online, you want to dial up fruitspirit.net. Not Fruit of the Spirit, but fruitspirit.net. A couple of keystrokes, they'll pretty much lead you down a pathway. In a couple of keystrokes, you'll see my name. Click on it, and then that'll take you and allow you to order it within that framework. Because there's a lot of doctors' names that come up. Okay, so that's enough on the preliminary information. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a short break? Of course, this is time for those of you who were waiting to get a chance to ask a question or make a comment that could do so. 412-825-6262. I have a mind to discuss, and we'll be discussing what's up with thyroid in the interim, because a lot is happening with thyroid, and it's just going unnoticed, it's going undetected, it's going untreated by the conventional medical community. We'll be right back to talk about it.
deductible. We have to make sure nobody gets sick this year. Remember what those doctor expenses cost for last year's colds and flu? Sorry, I've got to go. Love you.
We can do this. We can cut the fast food lunches. Soda, that's a lot of sugar. We could all take that evening walk. And hey, I heard a program about fruit. Fruit of the Spirit. What did they say? 1 ounce, the equivalent of 5 servings of fruit with herbs and minerals. We could add some to our breakfast protein shake. Fruit of the Spirit is unique whole fruit puree. Fruit of the Spirit contains fresh fruits native to the Holy Land and alkalizing minerals from the Dead Sea with no added sugar. Fruit of the Spirit is a unique product from 5 years of work from science-based nutritional experts. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit of the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. Fruit of the Spirit, convenient, affordable, and delicious. That's 1-800-442-3793. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, MD. You become confused about how best to manage your health. It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instructions, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you were looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, MD, is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back once again to AM Impact on Your Health here on this Friday version of the show. We call this the Get 'em Up Out of Town version. We're always looking forward to a weekend. I know. Listen to the weather this morning. Things aren't going to be all that wonderful this weekend, but hey, at least we're going to have a good day today. We're going to start that day off for you, I hope, in a very stellar fashion. I've said we'll open them up to you. Anything on your mind is okay with me. 412-825-6262. We'll get you in here and let you take over the show whenever you knock. I, however, have been plagued by this issue and finally have an opportunity to bring it to you. I'll call this little segment What's Up with Thyroid, and a lot is happening with the thyroid. Thyroid disease, and for the most part, 99% of the time, that's hypothyroidism. It's really rare to find hyperthyroidism, and so keeping numbers in perspective, that's pretty good odds that what I'm talking about to those listeners today is a thyroid that's not putting out thyroid hormone able to run the engine of the body, so to speak. If you have a couple things about leading up to, I get a directive from a pharmaceutical directive. Turns out there's just a big, huge shortage of thyroid hormone, and we'll talk about the various varieties. But it was sent to me to alert me of this shortage and that what I might be able to do about it. And we'll be talking about that too. But if you're sitting out there and you say, hey, geez, I wonder if I have thyroid disease, or how about this? I have thyroid disease. I'm on a thyroid medicine, which is what this directive sent to me was all about, because the availability of those thyroid preparations, somehow, it's not there anymore. The companies that manufacture the stuff are not resupplying the pharmacies, and consequently, that's why they sent me the directive. If you are on a thyroid preparation, you are really sick. I say for that to have occurred, that means that you had abnormal lab results which were revealed to your doctor, and based on what he or she was taught in medical school, once you see the abnormalities come up in the blood testing, then you make a diagnosis based on that and put a patient on a thyroid regime, usually thyroid hormone, and unfortunately, and usually something called Synthroid, which we'll talk a little bit about in just a moment. But I have always claimed, and I'm about ready to say it now too, which is I can't really trust thyroid testing to reveal whether someone is hypothyroid or not, because the testing gets so erroneous that clinically a person could be showing you, 15 or 20 symptoms out of a 30-symptom list. Literally, they're sitting across from you, a neon sign is lighting up over top of their head with an arrow pointing at them saying, this patient has thyroid disease. And then we look, and the thyroid testing, TSH, the T3 and T4, come in the normal range. Well, a long time ago now, many years ago, I've had to abandon the dependency that I was told in medical school I had to stick to in order to be able to make the diagnosis of hypothyroidism. I was taught, unless the numbers indicate it, you can't be making that diagnosis. And I find that is just, that's a weird word for me. That's just poppycock, okay? Whatever that word means, it's a bunch of baloney, a bunch of gargonzola, in the words of the great Myron Cope. That just isn't the case, because clinically, there are a whole bunch of ways to know whether or not things are going well. We're going to go over a list of them in just a minute. Anyway, if you're on a thyroid medicine now, the blurb that I received is of interest to you, because these thyroid preparations are being difficult to come by. You may find a shortage in your own area at your own pharmacy. Get ready for it. And if you haven't been diagnosed as having thyroid disease, I closed the first segment of the show saying, folks, you are living smack dab in the middle of something called the goiter belt. You're known all over the world by virtue of that fact, scientific fact, And so because, and the word goiter means exactly what it means, because goiter are abnormal growths of the thyroid gland that are due to the fact that the thyroid gland keeps getting stimulated to make more thyroid hormone, and the thyroid hormone that it's making isn't adequate enough, isn't healthy enough, isn't of the right chemical combination enough to be able to carry on the task. Therefore, the gland gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and finally, especially our ladies begin to develop these very prominent necks, look like turkey necks, very prominent, very distended in the area, and all that is a thyroid gland that's huge, that is hypertrophied by virtue of being stimulated by the pituitary hormone called TSH, which stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. Now, you live in an area known all over the world as the goiter belt because you all have thyroid disease, especially our ladies. We'll get into that maybe in a moment as to why the women who are clinically ill from thyroid disease and our men usually aren't clinical. They're subclinically ill. But women particularly are ill and have the symptoms for full-blown thyroid disease, but yet can have normal lab tests, and their doctor will not make that diagnosis, and therefore they go around literally miserable. Now, this directive, which was sent to me, essentially says there's a nationwide, I'm reading various things of it to avoid having to discuss it in its entirety, but currently the quotation is there is a nationwide shortage of Armour thyroid, and a company by the name of Forest is the producer of it, and it has not indicated any date when the production will be back on the market. Nature's Thyroid and West Thyroid, two equivalent products, are also, well, they say they're distributed by RLC Labs, and until recently manufactured by TimeCap Labs, and the big quotation, they are also unavailable. So, the issue of the 50-50 preparations, that's what Armour and Nature's Thyroid and Westroid are. Half T3, half T4. The problem here is that they're drying up. The supply of these is drying up at your local pharmacy. And if you're on them, that's pretty rare, because normally the medical community doesn't like using them, and they would instead have placed you on Thyroid, which is 100% T4. Now, even in this directive, which I thought this is the first time I ever saw it written so clearly from a medical person to one other medical person, which is some patients have used T4, which is either called levothyroxine or Synthroid. It's synthetic. It's not natural as the other ones are. They're also based on the theory that the thyroid gland converts T4 to T3. Now, here's the statement that I thought was interesting, because I have rarely seen it in print before. However, the quote goes on, as the thyroid gland of hypothyroid person is already malfunctioning, the ability to convert T4 to T3 may be hampered as well. I say it is hampered more often than not. And so literally, and the last bit of science, I think, that we have to discuss so that you can be up to speed on having an intelligent conversation about this, is that T3 is the biologically active form of thyroid hormone. T4 is not biologically active, or has very little biological activity. So T4 has to be cleaved and to produce T3, and once T3 is available, the body will be able to process it and have biological activity obtained from it. I hope that hasn't gotten too deep for you, but I think at least that much has to be known. What the point of this article was, besides telling me there's a shortage of Armour, Westroid, and Nature Thyroid, was in a sense, without saying it, that Synthroid is a dud. Now, I have said that before in this program and on these airways many times. Synthroid is a dud, and the reason it's a dud, and nice of the pharmacy folks to counsel me on why it is a dud, is that the conversion of this T4, which is what Synthroid is, 100% T4 to T3, probably doesn't even occur, and so consequently now I say this facetiously, which is you could take a truckload of T4 and not get any biological activity from it. And so what I have said about this dud called T4 is that the doctors love it. They put you on it. And I believe they love it because, as I have said, and now it's appropriate to say it within the context of this discussion, once again, is they will never get a phone call from a patient who has difficulty being placed on this med. The reason that they won't call their doctors to say there's a problem here is that the medicine is such a dud because it doesn't convert well in these patients. The T4 doesn't get converted to T3, making this such a dud that you could take a truckload of it and not get any biological activity, that a person who feels lousy continues to feel lousy. A person who's cold intolerant continues to remain so. A person that has constipation and all the other limitless numbers of symptoms associated with hypothyroidism keeps right on having them. So, hey, that's the way life is for these folks. They're quite used to experiencing it. They'd like to feel better, but they're not going to be calling their doctor saying, oh, my constipation continues, my intolerance to cold continues, and on and on and on. And so I believe that a big problem. If you are diagnosed by the conventional medical community, you have a tremendously serious thyroid problem because your lab tests were so out of kilter that it put you in a special category and allowed that diagnosis to be made. I say that there are quite a few people, especially here in western Pennsylvania, who should be in that category. Now, with all that being said, what's the real reason for such a discussion today? Well, I have been a proponent for quite some time of using things like Armour Thyroid, Nature Thyroid, Westroid. I'm now informed that these are not going to be commercially available to me, and patients who I already have on these medications are going to be calling in saying, hey, I can't find it, and my response to them is that, well, there's none to be found. This happens at the right time, however. And now the real reason for bringing it up to you, and that is I've finally decided that I'm not really pleased with the responses that my patients have had while on the 50-50 preparation of the Armour or the Nature's Thyroid or the Westroid. I didn't think that they were being successful enough with reversing all their symptoms either. And so we have a new method here. If you are diagnosed as, in my opinion, as having thyroid disease, and we're going to talk about how I think you should go about doing that, then we're going to be using something I've called before. I've called it white lightning, but what that really is 100% T3, the biologically active form of thyroid hormone, which is immediately acting. It's not a time-release substance at all, and it is going to produce the symptom reversals that are so difficult to get in these thyroid patients. And I'm going to be looking forward to that, and we'll talk about maybe how that's going to be accomplished on another day. But the fact that we're going to be pursuing this is what the message needs to be for those out there. Number one, if you are already diagnosed as having thyroid disease and you are on medicines, whether that's Synthroid, and 90% of you are on the Synthroid, only a small percentage of you have ever been placed on Armour or Nature's Thyroid. More than likely, you may be one of my patients to boot, because I gave up on the Synthroid a long time ago, and I still find the resistance existing out there in the medical community to even make that change. They love Synthroid. They, meaning the doctors, love it, and I say they love it because they get no calls about it, and no calls about it means their weekends are undisturbed, and nobody's going to have any serious problems developed by taking something such as that. Okay, so what about thyroid? I started this conversation by saying, what's up with thyroid? Well, you out there need to be aware of possibly thinking in the direction of hypothyroidism And you won't ever have that brought to your attention if the lab tests are the way the doctors are going to be determining whether or not the discussion should ever come up. If your lab tests are normal, and I'm telling you, that is no way indicative that your thyroid is normal. It's the lab tests that are being skewed, and they can't be the sole determiner of whether or not you have thyroid disease. So what should be? Well, I say there are two ways that should be used far and above the use of the laboratory. One is your clinical presentation, and the other is your basal body temperature. Now, clinical presentation, if you got a little pen or pencil nearby, I'm going to go through a list of the myriad of symptoms. And believe me, this is not a complete list in any way, but they are the most prevalent clinical presentations found in thyroid disease. I'm going to go through a list of, 10 or 15 of these. Probably just stop right there. And I want you to just put down a mark if you have any one of these problems that you face. Now, let's see what this list has to offer. Number one, cold intolerance. I say I've been shaking the hands of women, especially, that throw me a cold fish. So they telegraph to me the moment I meet them, we got a problem here. And when we get into a discussion, we find out, their hands are always cold. Their feet are always cold. They wear socks at night. They cuddle up with their husband. That's very good for their relationship, but the reason that the cuddling might have to do with just keeping warm. Anyway, cold intolerance is one of the hallmark symptoms. Morning accentuated fatigue. The list goes on. Forgetfulness, constipation, slow pulse, flaky and dry, rough skin, hair loss, depression, irregular menses, listlessness and irritability, puffiness of the face, muscle and joint aches, premenstrual symptoms, premature graying hair, infertility. I'll just stop it there. I could go on. If you heard in that list two items that you go, oh, I have one of those, then I think you should be on guard about investigating it. If you got three, don't worry about investigating it. You got to really consider the fact that you more than likely are hypothyroid, even though your lab tests come back normal. But to give you the power of being able to be certain about this, so that you can feel convinced that you are hypothyroid, there's an additional thing to do. And I'm pretty sure that once this is done, this will close the door on the speculation as to whether you may or may not be. So if you have that long list of symptoms, 3 out of that list of, there were about 12 to 14 there, then in my opinion, clinically, you're there. But we got to have some objectivity too. And you can do this objectivity at home because you have the ability to do what's called a basal body temperature. Now, thyroid hormone does a lot of things, but it does control metabolism, and it does so all by its little lonesome self. There are no other hormones that participate in metabolism, only thyroid hormone does. And so, what I need to find out, you need to find out, is when you arise in the morning, before your feet ever hit the floor, that temperature of your engine on idle, so to speak, is called your basal body temperature. I need you to record that. I need you to take about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of those. And if your basal body temperature, before you get up and move around, is not either in the high 97s or the low 98s, like 97.8 or 98.2 or something like that, then you sure as shooting have thyroid issues. Combine that with that little clinical list that I'm talking about, it's time to have at it, and you are probably droned to death thinking, well, your lab tests are normal, and therefore you don't have thyroid disease. That's the one thing you can't trust. The lab tests cannot be trusted. We'll get into that maybe at another time, but just trust me, I can't use them to make the diagnosis. I don't use them. No, I'll use them later on once I've come in with some hormone myself and try to make a decision as to how far to push that window. But to make the diagnosis of hypothyroidism, you don't look at lab tests because they'll lead you down the wrong road, and that's the way it is. Hey, I'm going to climb out the soapbox now. I hear a knock at the door. Come on in the store. Hello and welcome aboard.
Good morning, Dr. Courtney.
Hi.
Hi. I just had a couple questions regarding your subject.
Sure.
Do you know where I can purchase a basal thermometer? Because I misplaced one. I had it for years, and I misplaced it. And I checked at different drugstores. I can't seem to locate one.
Well, I think there's no such thing as a basal thermometer.
Well, no, I just mean a non-electronic one, a non-digital one.
Yeah, you won't find the mercury ones that have the little silver.
That's what I'm looking for.
Well, you will never find another one of those. They have been outlawed, and they've been outlawed for quite some time because the fluid inside of them that did the reading of temperature is mercury, and of course this is another one of those things that just makes so much sense. If we can't have mercury freely available out there to break and be dispersed and hit the floor, the only way you're allowed to put mercury anywhere is right into your mouth, and your dentist will do it. So you will never get a mercury thermometer. They have non-mercurial ones. They're shakedown ones. They have a red substance in them, and they do work well. So you can find those.
And what are they called?
They're called shakedown.
Shakedown. Okay.
Shakedown thermometers, and they are available. I mean, the hospitals are the best example of there's nothing more that has mercury in them in hospitals. So mercurial thermometers are out.
But
blood pressure,
like your hometown pharmacies, because if you go to like Target and Walmart, they're not going to have anything but the digital.
Okay, well, and you know what? And I have patients that have to take their temperature with them. It's okay with me. I usually say that to get an accurate one, I like to shoot it off the back of the throat, the mouth, rather than in the ear. But nonetheless, usually the temperatures are off so much that the electronic thermometers will work in terms of giving you the tip-off that you are so low that you have to do something about it with being diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so.
And what did you say the threshold was?
Once you take your basal body temperature, which is before rising in the morning, before having the feet hit the floor, it should be in the high 97s. But I mean by that it'd be 97.7, 97.8, or the low 98s, 98.1, 98.2, in that range. And I'm here to tell you something I learned in all these years. There are very few women that ever have temperatures in that range. So the reason is you're living in the goiter belt, you have no iodine in your soils, and it's the iodization of the thyroxine that makes it biologically active too. But we won't get into that discussion today.
And I forget my statistics days, but do you take it over 7 days and then divide it by 7?
Well, you want to do that. I would just say premenopausal women have a little bit of a problem in this, by just taking a random one or two, and that is because of ovulation, there's a spike in temperature at or about the time of ovulation. And so if you are a premenopausal female, you are going to have to take about 8 or 9 or 10 different temperatures based on where you are in your cycle. You'll be able to easily pick out what the day of ovulation was. By the way, there's a whole method of birth control that uses basal body temperatures to determine the fertile period of the female to begin with. So there's a lot of scientific information to say that there quite a bit can be forecasted by using basal body temperatures. But if you're postmenopausal, you don't have to worry about it. Take 3 or 4 on any 3 or 4 days swing, or not 3 days in a row. You can make them sporadic. After about 3 or 4 temperatures, you'll have the diagnosis. It'll be clear. Okay?
Okay. I don't know why. I thought they had to be consecutive days.
No, they do not have to be consecutive.
Okay.
It can be random. if you're postmenopausal. Now, if you're premenopausal, you can appreciate, as I hope you ladies listening out there with me, and by the way, that list of the clinical symptoms is the key.
And that's,
in my opinion, that's what enables me to make the diagnosis. Whenever someone comes in my office and we start having a discussion about the symptoms, and I'm talking about 10 symptoms, they have 8 of them, I say to them, you know what, just for the heck of it, please go home and do basal body temperature readings. You need to document it for your own purposes. I really don't need to, because I'm quite certain that you are hypothyroid, and we need to start working on that immediately. But it's always nice to have an objective thing going for you, and for the ultimate reason, which I do ask for, which is when we correct a person's thyroid dysfunction and we use thyroid hormone, ultimately the best test that you have arrived at the clinical point that you were searching and groping toward is when your basal body temperature finally is normal again. When that happens, you have reached Valhalla, medical Valhalla, and you know that whatever amount of thyroid hormone, if that's what you needed to get there, will have to be sustained forever. Okay?
okay. 2 more quick questions.
Go.
I'm realizing, like what you said, I'm probably approaching perimenopause, and
Okay.
I don't know whether I have a predisposition to it, because type 1 diabetes is hormonally, I mean, it's like a domino, a cascade of hormone, things that result after you get type 1, and it's all hormone related. And I
Yeah, you know what? You make a very good point. And so, how did you do on the symptom list when I started?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
95% of
All right.
my
Please, and as I say this to you, I'm really saying it to everybody else, and you're not unusual. Believe you me, when I'm talking to my ladies here, they're at the 95% range.
Well, it's funny though, doctor, because I've been on Armor and Nature's Thyroid.
Sure.
I switched off. I've been on it ever since, I'd say, 95. I started off
yeah.
with Goldstein, and every time you'd go in, all you would do was a questionnaire, and he is a really good doctor.
Yeah, he's an excellent doctor.
And I haven't been to him recently, but that's how I started back in, I'd say, 95.
And you're still filling out the questionnaire the same? If it was given to you today, it's
Yeah.
my guess that you're going to be filling out that questionnaire the exact same way that you did in 95, which is you still have those symptoms. Would that be a fair statement?
I'd say probably, but it's funny though, because I'm on the Armor and I'm on a tyrosine complex, and yet I still have some of the, I still have those symptoms.
Well, let me just tell you, it was the very fact that you just mentioned. I've placed patients, a lot of females, on, usually I use Nature's Thyroid, but it's the 50-50 preparation, 50% T4, 50% T3, or Armor or Westward. They're all in a similar category in that regard. And I've not been happy. And I got disgusted with seeing ladies dutifully do what I asked of them, and their symptom questionnaire or their symptoms didn't change, and their basal body temperatures didn't rise. And so it was only after my discussions with the great Roy Carey. Dr. Carey is back in the saddle now, and I spent a day with him a few weeks ago. We talked the entire afternoon about thyroid. Now he's been treating for over 30 years, and it was that discussion that led to bringing this announcement to those listening to me today. I'm using 100% T3. Now, if you think it was tough to find doctors that would use Armor, and it is hard, or Westeroid, or Nature's Thyroid, you'll be able to count on one hand how many will try to use T3, which is
Cytomed.
with the Cytomel, and because it is immediate release. With how you use it and how vigilant you are while it's being initiated is a dialogue that's going to have to occur between a doctor and their patient a lot of times to get this finally the dose just right. But let me just tell you, the questionnaires, as I've seen, not personally now, but talking to Dr. Carey as I have, the questionnaires change within a month. Within a month. That if you had a list of, 8, 10, 12 things, 8 of them are super good and the other 2 are improving. This is now what's finally persuaded me I got to change again. I thought it was a big change whenever I abandoned the use of T4, which is called Thyroid. That wasn't big enough. I got to get into using T3 and only T3, and that will get the engine rolling.
Okay.
And this will cause a lot of dialogue to have to occur between the doctor and the patient. There may be phone calls to me, okay, which is okay. That's good. Not that anything bad is going to happen, but that things are happening that never happened before probably is the biggest thing in favor of why one should consider using T3. And in your case,
I could do that in conjunction with the armor.
no,
right?
oh no, you're
no.
going to stop the armor.
Oh.
Here, the way you would want to ultimately have this work out is this. T3 is used up in about 12 hours. In fact, when you get placed on a regime, you take for 42 days, you're going to be taking a dose every 12 hours. And I mean like clockwork. So if you're at 7 a.m. taking your first dose, 7 p.m. you'll be taking your second. 7A, 7P, or 8A, or 8P, or 12 noon, 12 midnight. It doesn't matter. It's just as though there's 12 hours apart. And then finally, after 42 days, you should be able to focus in on the dose of T3 that you need, and then you can have a compounded time-release T3 put together where you only have to take it once a day, and it will dispense over the 24 hours the amount of T3 you need. Now, that to me is a great improvement but it takes time. It takes the willingness and effort in conjunction between a patient and a doctor who's willing to do this, and a patient who wants to get better. And do you want to see that symptom list go down? I suggest you take the next step. And there's no harm to come to you from it, but things may start popping. Things may start happening. It will catch you off guard. It may even make you a little jumpy to begin with. But I got to tell you that the moment you are, then things will start to clear up, and we'll be able to tailor the dose at that point.
Okay.
So thanks for your questions. They were right on. And the fact that you've been diagnosed. Hey, the fact that you were diagnosed. By the way, were you diagnosed by who? By the doctor that you mentioned a moment ago?
Yeah, you know what? There's blood tests, and like you said, they're not very reliable, but it's nice to have them just to have something there.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Questionnaires are what does it.
Yeah, the questionnaires would do it. And I need blood tests now. Not because I'm going to use them to make the diagnosis. I'm not. But once you start on a trek with using white lightning, or this T3 or Cytomel, you have to watch the numbers as you move down that pathway very closely. The numbers really do mean something then. So it's not because I'm going, okay, let's get the blood test to see if you're hypothyroid, as all my medical colleagues would that have conventional training. No, I wouldn't need those no more than man on the moon. But I do need them when you start using T3, and you're taking it every 12 hours, things are going to happen with those numbers that are going to be helpful to me to know if the dose has to be increased, stay the same, or need reduced. And that's why frequent lab tests after that are important. But to begin with, no, but we'll have them as a baseline so as to know when things begin to change, what I can expect the natural change in the values to be without making any major changes in the medication. I thank you for those questions, by the way. They were right on.
One more quick one.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you still carry the Lugol's iodine?
We had a liquid. Of course, you're talking about the liquid preparation.
Yeah.
You got to call in. I know we carry iodoral. I'm not sure that we still have the Lugol's, but
because I want to do the patch test, but
the patch test.
But I still want to take it orally. My mom had me on it for years, and
I got some people that swear by that liquid, and it's okay because it's made that there's 12.5 milligrams of iodine in each drop, and so and the tablets are made at 12.5 milligrams in a tablet. So that all started with Dr. Lugol's preparation. Call at the office and check with Kim to see if we still have it.
But basically, everybody who is low thyroid needs iodine, right?
Well, in this part of the country, in the goiter belt, you better believe it.
Okay.
And so the reason that for sure all females, starting in adolescence, begin to have demonstrate their thyroid anomaly through symptoms, and it's based by the time a female reaches, puberty, 13, 14 years old, that's already 13 or 14 years without the right amount of iodine. And then when the symptoms really begin to manifest themselves, then at that point, iodine alone may be all that's needed. But by the time, the 20s come around, the 30s come around, there's such a deterioration in the gland itself that it can't be revived, as I'm seeing, through the use of iodine alone. And that's what we really need to make certain that I think now we need to make certain we use T3 and not, for sure, never T4. That never worked. But the 50-50 T3, T4's leg armor are now highly suspect in my mind as being able to accomplish the objective.
Yes.
Okay?
I'd rather take the Lugol's, the liquid, in my opinion, than the tablet form for some reason. I think it's more absorbable.
Oh, I think you may be right about that. There's whatever your personal preference is, the amount of iodine is the key, and they're both organically safe forms of iodine.
Okay.
And from that perspective, either one will do. Your preference? Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful questions. Let's take a short break. In the interim, somebody else may want to dial us up. Yeah, we're talking about what's up with thyroid. Hey, how many symptoms were on your list when I was going through? What are you going to do about it? Be back in a moment to talk about it with you.
Have you been to the doctor lately? Was fatigue top of your complaint list? Even if your doctor asks you what you eat, the recommended 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day is a dream in your busy schedule. What if you learned of a product 5 years in the formulation that delivers 5 servings of fruits and minerals in just 1 ounce? That's right, it's the Spirit. The blessings of Fruit the Spirit are now formulated into a delicious whole fruit puree product rich in antioxidants and minerals. Your health is more than just a test result. It's a balance of physical, spiritual, and emotional factors. You work regularly to strengthen your faith, let Fruit the Spirit help cover your nutritional needs in a convenient and cost-effective ounce a day. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. Fruit of the Spirit, 5 servings of fruits and minerals with no added sugars. That's 1-800-442-3793 for your good health. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, MD. You become confused about how best to manage your health. It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instructions, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you are looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, MD, is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back once again to An Impact on Your Health here on this Friday version of the show. We've had a little bit of a emphasis today, and I'm glad that the time has finally come to begin to emphasize some of the things we do here at the office that are quite unique. This work with thyroid disease, and the title of today's discussion, What's Up with Thyroid? As you can see, there's a lot up with thyroid. And there's always been a lot up with thyroid in western Pennsylvania and in this goiter belt. And so for you ladies, especially you ladies who are listening to me today, how many symptoms are on your symptom list? How many ones could you check off? I said you only needed 3. And then, of course, there's that handshake that you all been throwing me for the longest time. I call that the cold fish handshake. I mean, when our skin meets each other's, you absolutely register with me. And the one that says, well, I have a warm heart. And I'm sure she has a warm heart. But that cold hand, when it meets my warm hand, they go, oh my, your hands are really warm. And I go, oh no, they're not. That's just normal. Your hand is not. And so the cold, the cold extremity, especially hands and feet, I'd say the number one telltale sign you can't really hide. I see ladies wearing, these get-ups to go to bed at night. They're all got socks, and they wear. It's the middle of summer. They're wearing sweaters. Just the model of dress that women had to adjust to because of this cold intolerance, and that can all be changed and all be turned around. So, what are you going to do? Keep going to your doctor and wait for the next lab test to change? It's not going to happen. Once it's been established that you have normal thyroid function studies, and normally they use 3, TSH, T3, and T4. And let's just talk a moment about why they're so erroneous, why those labs can't forecast and don't forecast. And the reason that it doesn't do so well is that they just walk up on the street and they get 1,000 people. And they say, hey, how do you feel? And the person goes, well, I feel great. Well, they come on over here. So they do that, and they find 1,000 people. They take all 1,000 of them, and they send them off to do whatever the lab test is. We're talking about thyroid function study, so, okay, 1,000 people go off. They get TSH, T3, and T4 drawn. And then, when all the results of all 1,000 people have been readied and made available, they plot out a bell-shaped curve. The 10% lowest values indicating that you have hypothyroidism, and now allow the doctor to make that diagnosis in 10% of the 1,000. And the 10% who have the highest of all the values are allowed to be called hyperthyroid and can be recommended for various treatments to correct that by your doctors also. And everybody else, the other 80%, they fall in the middle of that bell-shaped curve. Why? They are declared normal. Now, on the one hand, you go, well, you know what, makes sense. And I guess in a sort of twisted sort of way, it does. But there's a flaw. And the flaw from the start, from the get-go, is you can't take 1,000 abnormal people, which is what I claim is being done, and try to make them normal statistically. Oh yeah, you can draw a bell-shaped curve, and you can say, well, this 10%, this is going to be hypothyroid. These 10% over here, they're going to be hyper. And all you can do that statistically, but you started with 1,000 miserable, unhappy, constipated, cold-handed, cold-footed, depressed, irritable people. And you're just not allowed, by virtue of statistics, to determine and deem that they are normal. That's why the lab tests cannot be trusted. That's why I can't use them, because they've taken all the folks and allowed them to be put in the mix, and so the 10%, 80% bell-shaped curve is drawn out, but nonetheless, everybody in that whole thing, the people that are most different there are the 10% who are abnormally high. Those are truly abnormals, and there probably isn't much larger in number. Hyperthyroidism is not all that common. Hypothyroidism is rampant. Now, a word about this female-male thing, because I'm telling you, I shake a lot of hands, shake enough hands of men and enough hands of women. Men rarely, if ever, throw me that cold fish. It's the ladies all the time who throw me that handshake that just the moment our hands meet, signal to me, Houston, we have a problem, and light kind of jokes will be made about it, but I know that there's an entire symptom list that we need to go through. And when we finally get to it, there are many other symptoms other than the cold hands and the cold feet. But question comes up, well, why is it that all the women, why the ladies are clinically active and the men aren't? So why? Well, in our area especially, and it's the one I'm most familiar with, I think I've come up with the explanation. It goes something like this. You all live in the goiter belt. You all eat foods that have been grown within the goiter belt. These foods are completely devoid of any iodine, and iodine, exogenous iodine that you consume is absolutely necessary in order to iodize the thyroid hormone that your gland makes. Your gland makes T4. You've got to put the iodine on the T4. And if you don't do that, it turns out to be a dud itself. And whether it gets cleaved or not, and that's always doubtful whether after a while it can be cleaved, whether it gets cleaved or not, then you would have inactive and a dud T3. All because if there is no iodine that you consume, you can't have biologically active thyroid hormone. Now, men grow up in Western Pennsylvania. They don't have iodine in their diets. Women grow up in Western Pennsylvania. They don't have iodine in theirs. Why is it that the ladies go on to really manifest the bulk, the largest percentage of hypothyroidism, and the men only so very infrequently do? Well, it goes to the matter of iodine and how the body looks at it. You see, every single tissue in the body has iodine receptors. So every single tissue must receive iodine in order for it to function properly. However, there are two tissues of the body that require massive amounts of iodine to be healthy and to function. The number one tissue that has to be massively supplied with iodine is the thyroid gland. Well, we've been talking about it the entire time. Guess what the number two tissue is? It's the breast. And now, in the words of the great Paul Harvey, and now you know the rest of the story. Have a great weekend, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on Monday. Rick Hill's going to be back with us. Thyroid issues are now in play. Come talk about them as frequently as you like to. Come on and see me in the office, and we'll get right on dealing with your thyroid issues, especially if you're on that list of clinical symptoms that I talked about today. So until Monday, this is Dr. Dennis Courtney saying so long for AM Impact on Your Health.
AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, MD, Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075